Hello, history scholars. Mrs. Olson here. Today's lesson is about the Homestead and Pacific Railway Acts. Now, whenever we see the word act or acts in a historical context, we can always know that it refers to a law. So the Homestead and Pacific Railway Acts were laws. Now, the learning target for the day is you will be able to understand the impact of the Homestead and Pacific Railway Acts. Now, it's always a good idea to take notes while you are watching and learning from a video lesson. You can stop and pause at any time to write what you need down. Okay, here we go. Now, the Homestead Act is the first one that we are going to be talking about. And this graphic shows that in the western part of the United States, and the West was anything west of the Mississippi River, that there was this land that was up for grabs, as you can see right here, 1 million acres up for grabs. Now, it says our water, our wildlife, our way of life, all at stake. And so we're going to talk about what that means exactly on the next slide. So the the Homestead Act was actually signed by this guy. Anybody recognize him? We learned about him in the Civil War, or he's just got that very famous presidential face. That's right, that's Abraham Lincoln. He signed the Homestead Act into law in 1862. Now, some of you guys are going to remember that in 1862, the Civil War was raging. So even though we've already studied the Civil War, there are other things that are happening at the same time. And one of them is the Homestead Act. Now, one of the reasons why Lincoln wanted to have people go west is because he wanted this part of the United States to be populated. He wanted people to live there, okay? One of the reasons why he wanted people to live there was so that the country, Americans, could take advantage of the region's commercial and agricultural potential. That means that that part of the United States has many natural resources. There's lots of land to use, and there are all of these opportunities for farming. So not only can you feed yourself if you establish a farm, you're also going to be able to create a commodity. You're going to be able to create a product which can be sold. So that means that you're making money and that the government then is making money. Okay, another reason why Lincoln wanted to have people go west is he wants to establish a population base. So he wants people to live there, stay there, work there, have children there, and have generations stay and live there too. And also institutions that were sympathetic to the Union cause. So remember, 1862, the Civil War is going on. The South had wanted to secede, meaning break away from the North, the Union, and part of it had to do with slavery, right? So if President Lincoln can get people who are against slavery and believe in African Americans being free and go west past the Mississippi, then that will only strengthen the Union cause. Okay? All right, now with the Homestead Act, there were 270 million acres of land that went to then private citizens. So it isn't the government who owns this land, it is now private citizens. Okay, so let's take a step back for just a second. This really wasn't government land, although the United States had bought it and made claims to it. Who actually lived there before the white man, before the American government? If you said Native Americans, you are right. And so the Native Americans are part of this story, and we will be talking about their side of the story. Okay, so here's the map. I love maps. It provides so much information. Okay, so the original 13 colonies, here we go. Here is the Mississippi River. Anything west of the Mississippi River is considered the West at this time. So you can see that this is showing the growth of the United States from 1783 to 1853. The Homestead Act was passed in 1862. So this map is showing you how the United States was formed, when parts of it were bought, and from whom, okay? All right, here's another map that I thought was kind of a fun one because it shows westward expansion from 1860 to 1890. Now you can see that the eastern part of the United States is populated, and there are rail lines on the eastern side of the United States. Now before, this is the Transcontinental Railroad, before the Transcontinental Railroad was built, there were not any rail lines. So that one's kind of a fun one. And here we go with another map, and the green is showing you the area of the United States settled by 1870. The kind of orangish, tannish color settled by 1880. And the purple color settled by 1890. So you can see that in the western part of the United States, by 1890, not all of it was inhabited or settled. Okay? Now remember that there are Native American tribes that live in here, and we are settling. White Americans are settling in these native lands. Okay, more on the Homestead Act. Now, a person can claim up to 160 acres of land for free underneath the Homestead Act. They had to be an adult, and they had to be considered head of a family. Now, this included freed slaves, and it also included a woman as long as she wasn't married. Okay? They had to be 21 years old, and the other stipulation was that they lived on it for 5 years. They had to build a house. They had to make improvements, meaning that they had to start tilling the land, building other things on it, and create and grow a farm. So here are some ads about going west and staking your claim in this part of the country. This is another primary document, and it is an actual homestead claim. So up here you can see that the date is 1866. It's received by, this is the homesteader. They actually had to pay a total of $18, so $14 upon the paperwork, and then $4 later on. So a lot of that was a filing fee. Okay. Now, there really were not a whole lot of trees out there on the Great Plains, and so people, homesteaders that went out there, what they first lived in were sod houses. So you can see that this is made out of dirt and mud, and they build it right onto the land. There's no foundation there. And this guy's house is just a teeny bit smaller than this family's right here. Okay? Now, remember, African Americans, freed slaves, can also claim land for free underneath the Homestead Act, and they became known as exodusters because there was this kind of a migration, a whole bunch of them coming out of the South, and many of them went to Kansas to claim their land. All right, moving on to the Pacific Railway Act. Now, Congress believed there was a need for efficient rail transport to the Pacific coast because there wasn't any. The Pacific Railway Act authorized 2 railroads. You can see here it is the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific to construct, to build the first transcontinental rail lines. So trans means across the continent. It goes all the way across the continent. Okay? Now, these 2 companies were actually given money, bonds, and land grants, so they were actually given the land by the federal government to construct the first across the continent transcontinental railroad. So this is kind of a fun map, a big colorful one that shows us the rail line, the Transcontinental Railroad, that is connected here and goes across the United States to San Francisco. Okay, we're going to learn a little bit about Promontory Point, which is in Utah, and that's where the last spike was hit. That's where they finished the railroad. Okay, this is an antique map, so an old one that shows you that same rail line. The other one was a little bit easier to see. You can see that they started here and it goes all the way across to San Francisco. Okay. These are 2 ads that are advertising for people to take the new Transcontinental Railroad. You can see that they are calling it the Union Central Pacific Railroad Line after the 2 companies that made it, the Great American Overland Route, and you can read what's on here, to Union and Central Pacific Rail Line. They can catch it in Omaha, Nebraska. It goes all the way to San Francisco. Okay, so with the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, it reduces time from several months to get across the country down to 1 week. Okay. So this is kind of another fun map. So the blue is showing you Lewis and Clark. That's their expedition and the route that they took. Anybody remember that one? Now, you probably in the 5th grade learned about the Oregon Trail. So Oregon Trail ending up in Oregon. That's the green one. And then if we skip ahead to the Transcontinental Railroad, starts in Omaha, Nebraska, and goes all the way to San Francisco. All right, now at the end, in May of 1869, workers drove in the ceremonial Golden Spike at Promontory, Utah, which joined the 2 rail company lines, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific. Okay. Now, this is a painting depicting that day, and then this is an actual photograph of that day. And this is a National Historic Site in Promontory, Utah. You can see that it is part of the Federal Park Service now, so people can go visit it. And this is a train that was redone, repainted, to commemorate the driving of that last spike for the Transcontinental Railroad. All right, guys, I hope you learned a lot and had a little bit of fun learning about the Homestead and the Pacific Railway Acts. Talk to you later. Bye.